Good morning. You're listening to Caregiver Crossing, a podcast brought to you by Joy's House, presented in partnership with CarDon Associates. And we're really happy that you're here. If it's your first time, welcome. Caregiver Crossing is a podcast created just for you, the caregiver. I'm Tina McIntosh.
I'm her friend, Terry Lynn Stacy from Hancock County, Indiana.
Terry, we have talked about rehabilitation before, and I think that word conjures up a lot of images for people and what it really is. And so what we're going to talk about is if someone in your life needs specialized care to recover after a surgery, there's an acute illness, a stroke, rehabilitation therapy could be the solution for them and for you. But there are a lot of things that need to be considered when choosing a rehabilitation center. And quite frankly, sometimes there's not enough time. And so we are joined today by Beth Timko with CarDon Associates. Beth is the Director of Marketing and Admissions at Hamilton Trace. Beth, first of all, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So how do you describe rehabilitation services to people?
Well, most commonly, what we work with is that sub-acute rehabilitation services here at Hamilton Trace. That's probably the bulk of what we do here. And that's usually those short-term stays, someone that's come to us to focus on therapy after a hospital stay, trying to get back to baseline, trying to regain their strength and be ready to go back home.
I'm going to jump on this really quick, Terry, before I know you've got questions too.
No, go ahead.
But here's my experience with it. Someone is in the hospital, they've fallen and they've, we'll say broken a hip because we know that's very common, or they've had a stroke or some kind of illness. All of a sudden, one day somebody comes in and says, I'm with discharge and you're going to be going to rehabilitation. And then those of us in the room are like, huh? What? I'm going, what and where and how and when and what are we going to do there? And so does it come as a surprise to most people, or have I just been in the wrong rooms?
No, it definitely comes as a surprise. Sometimes the quickness of the discharge process is a big surprise to families and the residents themselves. For example, someone today would say, oh, the doctor just told me that I need to discharge to subacute rehab. And the case manager at the hospital came in and gave me 3 choices. I've got to pick one and I'm going there tomorrow. And then how do families choose that quickly? How do they take the time to find the right fit and the right quality experience for their loved one?
Yeah. And so I have that. What kind of questions should you be asking? You know, this has now been thrust upon you, your loved one. And now what kind of questions do you need to ask to find the right place for care?
Well, if you can, I would go in and ask those questions in person. Sit down and talk to admissions director or someone in the management staff to be able to get those questions answered face to face. Those answers seem to just connect you a lot more too with actual building the community that you're researching. But you want to always ask about staffing ratios. Probably the very first thing you're going to want to know is, my mom is going to be on this rehabilitation unit, and how many other residents are there and how many people are actually going to be able to take care of my mom. So
what's a good staffing ratio?
Well, at Hamilton Trace, for example, hours on our subacute rehab is about 1 to 6. And that is probably the highest staffing ratio that you're going to hear. Sometimes it's 1 to 10, 1 to 14. It just depends on the facility because there's no regulations right now on what that staffing ratio actually has to be. So you'll find that it's all going to be different from one building to another, which is why staffing ratios are going to be so important to ask about.
Yeah. And it's a scary thing because, I hear that ratio and I get the numbers. I get 1 to 6, and that's impressive. And then I think about the human aspect of it. So that means that while my loved one is in a room and it's new to her and she's nervous and she wants to be home and she wonders what the food's going to be like and if people are going to take care of her and how long it takes someone there to get in the room and help her when she presses a button, right?
Exactly.
Those staffing ratios become less about the numbers and more about the care that our loved ones are going to get. And so that's really great advice. And then what about the therapies? Because we hear things like occupational therapy and physical therapy and speech therapy. And are those important things in rehabilitation?
Oh, absolutely. And you'll find that any of the facilities across the board that are considered subacute rehab will have the physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy there. Most will have respiratory therapy available, wound care management experts, things like that. But one of the things that I find to be important is the continuity of that therapy staff as well. A lot of subacute rehab facilities will use a therapy company that's contracted. And so you don't necessarily have the same staff there every day to work with your mom. Maybe you have somebody that the physical therapy assistant maybe sees her once and then never sees her again. So trying to make sure that the therapy staff, as well as the nursing staff, have that continuity of care for your loved ones so they can really get to know them and help to motivate them and know what to talk to them about and see when they start to get tired, understand them a little bit better than someone that's just laying eyes on them for the first time every day.
Oh, Terry is muted and asking a question, so I'm going to go first. So, Beth, years ago, my biological father had to go into a subacute rehabilitation center in Fort Wayne. Okay. You tell me if this is a good idea or if you're like, I cannot believe you're saying this out loud. Never do that again. Because I don't live there. I was his POA. I went and basically camped out. I mean, his room, thankfully, was right next to kind of the gathering area, if you will, and close to the nurses' station. And I went and I stayed not 24 hours, but I stayed at some point through every shift so I could meet the staff there. I wanted them to lay their eyes on me and know that he had an advocate. And I wanted to know who I was talking with when I called in. Good idea or super annoying idea?
No, I think that's a great idea because that really your job as the loved one is to be their advocate and to make sure that you're communicating everything that you see that we need to do. If there's something we need to do differently, if there's something we can do to make it more comfortable, because it's an industry where we're taking care of people, but the caregivers are also human. So knowing that there's always something that maybe can be done better or just having that connection of you being there so that we know, hey, we can talk to you now about your daughter because we got to meet her and now we know a little bit more about you and we feel more connected as well. So that makes you feel better because you know the staff, but I think it makes the staff feel more of a personal service and more of a personal touch.
Good. I was afraid they were talking behind my back, which would have been fine. So, Terry, Stacy, you're back and you're unmuted.
I am unmuted. There's a young lady next door to me and right here. And we were just having this conversation about help. This happened to her husband. He had some major surgery. It was nothing he would need rehabilitation for. But when they threw him, got him out of the hospital quickly and then send him home to get well. And she's watching him 24 hours a day. And she said, I wonder if there was some place that I could take him that he could have that 24-hour care. Or is that something that somebody needs to come to your house to do? Because it's not like he had knee surgery and now needs rehab or anything like that. He just needed help 24 hours a day, watching and making sure he was getting his meds and just so much more. She just felt more comfortable if he had had that 24-hour care like he would have had in the hospital, but they got him out of there pretty quick. Is that something? Is that something that's available?
Absolutely. There's the option to do a respite stay. So we basically call that for the caregiver to have a break. And pretty much any subacute building, any skilled nursing facility like ours would be able to offer that. Some assisted livings do as well. It just would be dependent on each particular campus and what they can offer. But the respite stay sometimes is so important for that oversight from nursing staff to lay eyes on the loved one, see if there's anything else that needs to be addressed. It's kind of a nice way to be able to get that nursing oversight and also give the caregiver a much needed break, a few hours of rest without worry.
Yeah. And I would add, Terry, that from a financial perspective, just ask the questions about, will insurance cover this? Here are the government, programs that we qualify for, or they can help you figure that out. Is it private pay? Just to make sure there's a clear understanding up front and what length of stay is. And I know, we only have a couple minutes left here, but whether or not the respite is a week or if it could be up to 30 days, or if we're talking short-term rehabilitation, I think, is that often 60 days, Beth, that that would be like the subacute?
Yeah, a subacute stay is usually about 60 days at a maximum. Now, most of the time they want us to keep it to 20 days or less. Because it's always how they do in subacute rehab is a reflection on the hospital that they came from. So it's kind of always monitored that way. And a lot of people have managed insurances that start a copay on day 21. So a lot of our residents that come in with United Healthcare or Aetna, Humana, so to speak, those will try to go home on day 20 so that they don't start up with a copay then.
Okay, so here's my question about going home. Is it part of your job there to make sure that the person going home has the care they need when they get home? Or do you kind of do the same thing the hospital did and say like, hey, guess what? You get to go home tomorrow. And then they're left on their own to try and figure it out.
Well, I'll tell you, most of the time, if someone has traditional Medicare as their primary insurance coverage, we are able to plan a little bit better because some of the other managed insurances will give us a 48 hours notice before they have to.
That is not fair. That's not fair to the family. And it's not fair to you. It has to be a huge struggle from your perspective of you care about the patients. It's not just, a body in a bed for you. And then all of a sudden, they say, hey, you've got 48 hours and you have to scramble then too to give them the best care, right?
That's exactly right. And what's nice though is knowing that about those insurance plans. We often start working on those discharge planning from the first family meeting that we have. It's called a care plan meeting. We'll talk about their progress so far, how long we expect them to stay, and then what the goals are for discharge. And have you had a home health company before? And can we reconnect you with them so we can get services started right away when you go home? Are you going to need any adaptive equipment? Will you need a hospital bed ordered? Are you going to go home on oxygen? And let's get that set up ahead of time. So because we do at least know that about the quick cuts from those insurance plans, we can plan ahead for it. We can kind of see it coming too, because we know how they've hit a plateau or they've stopped progressing. So it is short, but at the same time, we've learned to make the best of it. And our social services team, that's their specialty, is making sure that those discharge plans are in place, the connections are made, and that transition is as smooth as possible.
Well, thank you for doing that, because I don't think that everybody does. And so, sometimes we as the patient or the family don't know how to advocate for ourselves. And so it's really reassuring to know that there are people like you, Beth, and, the others within CarDon and specifically Hamilton Trace who are thinking that through for us, because we wouldn't know what to do without you. So thank you for being here. Terry, would you take us into close?
Absolutely. As we do close this show, we just want thank you so much, Beth. We would like to remind our listeners. And by the way, did we mention how to get a hold of you, Beth? If anybody would like to talk to you, how do they do that?
Sure. The easiest way is to call our building, and our main number is 317-813-4444. And at that point, you can connect to any of us, but I would be in the admissions office, and you can ask for Beth.
Okay, good deal. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. Thank you for today. And again, we just want to remind everybody that you can contact Tina McIntosh for more information and resources to help you through the journey of caregiving. Do that by sending her a note, tina@joycehouse.org. And also, we want to thank Caregiver Crossing wants to thank the good people at CarDon Associates, with 20 communities owned, operated, or managed in the Midwest, and more than 40 years of senior living experience. CarDon Associates provides residents with the best senior living options and personalized service. Thank you all so much for listening to us today. Until next time, take good care of each other, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Caregiver Crossing.